It's time to play ball. Welcome to the podcast with no limits. Whether it be sports, current events, or random thoughts, this is the place to step in and stay a while. Your host is a proud alumnus of Rio Hondo Prep, a former minor league baseball umpire, and a man with strong opinions. Welcome to the Get Home Safe podcast and your host, Matt Hersema.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Get Home Safe. Happy Friday to everybody out there. Only 8 days until Christmas. I can't believe we are in the single digits, almost 1 week away, but it's here, ready or not. It is the Christmas season. And man, for a lot of us who celebrate maybe a few days before with friends or family, I mean, it's even closer than those 8 days. So Merry Christmas to all. And again, happy Friday and welcome to another fun episode of the Get Home Safe podcast. I have a great guest today. I'm going to be joined by Erin Murphy, someone I've never really talked to before, but I've heard great things about. I've heard her on the Pro and Con podcast with Zach Stiver and Javier Rodriguez. I've also heard her talked about through her boyfriend, who is the head football coach at Citrus College, Brandon Hayashi. I had him on the podcast a few months back before the college football season started. So it was a lot of fun talking to him about football and just the anticipation of the season. And he mentioned Erin a few times. They met at Citrus College. That's a funny story that I'm sure her and I will get into here. But Erin's also a coach at Glendora High School, I believe. Hopefully I have all that information correct. We'll confirm it all when we talk with her here shortly. But Erin went to Rio Hondo Prep, was amongst the classmates, as I mentioned, Stiver and Rodriguez, and a kind of a great group of people. There's a lot of great groups of people in at Rio Hondo Prep, of course, many of the alum, but that group seemed to be a pretty special, tight-knit class and just group of friends and everything as they continue to go about this life, this adult life that we are now living. So looking forward to a conversation with Erin, talk about Rio, talk about Kerry, talk about coaching, maybe dating, what dating a coach is like, see what her thoughts on Christmas, just a lot of things to get into. So I'm really looking forward to this and just having a fun Friday conversation as we've been doing here on the Get Home Safe podcast for quite some time. So let's bring her on the podcast right now and just enjoy another Friday conversation, guys, here on the Get Home Safe podcast. Okay, I'm joined today by Erin Murphy, a proud member of the class of 2013 from Rio Hondo Prep. She's also a coach at Glendora High School. She's dating the Citrus College football coach. She's a Christmas fan, podcast fan, a lot to talk about. Erin Murphy, welcome to the Get Home Safe podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I love the tree behind you. Very nice. Very well decorated. Big angel on top. Very nice. Got your Christmas stuff up. Are you a big Christmas person?
We are. Usually we have much more up in the house, but I think as the years go on, my mom is like, I don't want to get any more out because it's just more to put away.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I am a very big Christmas person and been decorating. It feels for weeks now and in our little apartment here, but we love it. It's the best time of year. By the time this airs, will be 8 days from Christmas. So I'm very, very excited.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay. I like that.
Erin, anyway, we ran in different circles, different ages, of course. But you kind of know names when you go through Rio or Kerry. You kind of like, oh yeah, I know that person. You know their name, but you never really talk. And this is the first time you and I have really ever talked. But two things. First off, Brandon Hayashi, your boyfriend, is a head football coach at Citrus College. Had him on the podcast a few months back. That was a lot of fun. And the other thing I told you off the air was that I asked myself, I was like, who is Air Bear? Because every time I posted on Instagram who the upcoming guest is, you were one of the first likes I always got. Air Bear. I finally had to ask some, but I think it was Zach Stiver. I said, hey, who's Air Bear? I have no idea who this person is. And it was you.
Yeah. I don't know how or when, but that nickname came from Rio, actually. I think Ryan Wiley and Jake Holguin, those were the two that like just dubbed me Air Bear. Because it was like when Instagram was just starting and I was reluctant to get on it because I was like, what's my name gonna be? Erin Murphy. Like, that's lame. I don't want that. And they were like, you're Air Bear. Like that's your name. And I was like, okay, like there it is. So it's like been the same ever since. So
That's hilarious. Yeah, I was, Instagram names are funny, but I when I started the podcast, I had no idea what was going to come of all this, and just kind of the following grew, and then it still gets not a ton of plays, but some constant plays. When did you first discover the podcast? Come across the Instagram, or how exactly did you discover it?
yeah, through Instagram for sure. Um, I think, like, I'm sure when you created your account, it might say like, oh, people you may know, right? And so, when you're first building an account, you kind of just start following a bunch of people, right? And I think I either like saw you as like a suggested person or you followed me. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I remember looking at it and being like, get home safe. And then I looked and I was like, Matt Hersma, I know that name. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to follow him. And then I
Cool.
started listening to your podcast and here we are.
Yeah. What are some of the podcasts that you've listened to, or that you find, I don't know, that you remember specifically? I know there's been a lot now.
Yeah. Well, I listened to Jason Ramos because he talked about the why when he was on. And of course, he went to Rio. So I knew him because him and my older sister were good friends, still kind of are, even though there's like an age separation. When they were at Rio, when they got out of Rio, they got closer. And so I listened to his podcast because he was talking about the why. And then you had my uncle on, Uncle Mike was on here, Mike Murphy. A lot of people had him as a coach.
Yeah.
It's funny, people hear my last name and they're like, your dad coached me. And I'm like, no, probably my uncle. And they were like, oh yeah, your uncle. So yeah, listen to him. Um, Gosh, I'm like brain farting now. I'm like, I've listened to a handful of your podcasts, but like those names are the ones that like stick out the most.
Sure.
Because my sister and I actually listened to a couple of them together because we were like, oh, we want to listen to this guest.
Yeah. It's been cool. Like, I didn't know what was going to come of it, but it became kind of this Rio Hondo reunion thing where you find out people's stories and kind of how they discovered Care and Rio. And it's been fun. It hasn't been repetitive to me because every story is different. And so it's just been, I don't know, a blessing in a way. How did you discover Care Youth League or start Care Youth League?
So my dad actually grew up, and I think my grandma went to what would have been GCL, right? No, yeah,
Mhm.
not BCL, but like when it was that separation still. So she would have been in like the girls Christian program. And she went to that for a little bit because we are related to the Orsburns. So Bill Orsburn is my uncle. Um, and that's my dad's uncle. So that's my grandma's brother. So they got involved. And then I don't know. My grandma didn't go through like the whole program. She went to like a little bit of it, I think. And then my dad and his siblings got involved, and that would have been KYL at that point. So they were involved. They went to Rio, um, I think for high school because Pearl wasn't a thing yet. And they lived in Monrovia, so they went to Santa Fe Middle School. And then in high school went to Rio. And just my dad went to Rio. My mom didn't grow up in Rio or anything. She didn't even grow up really around here. Um, and then all us girls got involved and went through the entire program of Pearl, Care, Rio, the whole nine.
From the very beginning.
Yep.
Well, it's so funny. Like you talking about the Orsburns, I forgot about that connection. I went.
Oh yeah.
Alex Orsburn was one of my classmates in 2003. So it's just funny how the connections are crazy, especially at Kerry Youth League. I mean, people who grew up in the organization, which you pretty much did. I had some other classmates like Alex and Devin Drain who were, what's the term? Care kids, I guess. And I think some people fit the criteria and some don't. I think you were telling me off the air something like that.
Yeah. I think the criteria really is like if I think it has to be both parents.
Okay.
We can, if we bring on somebody else, we can have this debate, but I think it's got to be both parents, and they have to be leaders. So like you could be a care kid and grow up in the program and like go all the way through it and everything. Or like have a parent that went through it, but to be like a true care kid, I think you got to have parents who are leaders. Because my dad never became a leader. He only did RHLA for like a year or two, or maybe he finished. I know he did RHLA for a little bit. So whether he like actually finished RHLA and then left, I just know he never became a leader.
Well,
So,
it's still in the blood. It's still in the blood. You know, so maybe not full blooded, but hey, okay, I get what you're saying. That's funny stuff. But no, Kerry Youth League, at least for as a young boy, I absolutely loved it. I loved playing sports. I always ask, I haven't actually had too many females on the podcast, which a lot of people have been pushing me to do. I'm like, okay, we'll work on it. But what was your experience like in Kerry? Did you love the sports? Were you more into the other things the girls program did? Tell me about your experience.
yeah, that's funny you asked, because I was listening to Cole Barrett's podcast, and you asked him kind of the same thing about care. And I was like, all right, I gotta like take notes. What was care like for me? No, I loved it. Brandon and I actually talk about like when we have kids one day of putting our kids in care, because as coaches now, a lot of the kids that I see, they start specializing in a sport and playing club or travel ball or whatever at such a young age, and they just get burnt out. Like I have sophomores who have been playing volleyball for like 8 years, and they're already burned out of volleyball. And I'm like, you're 15. Like what? But no, I loved it because you're always playing something different. So I just remember growing up, like my favorite sport was whatever season we were in. So whether that be like basketball, like that was my favorite sport. And then like we'd move on to softball, and then that was my favorite sport.
Yeah.
But I love the sports aspect for sure. But being in the girls program, we do things like, they kind of prepare you to be like a lady. Like they domesticate you a little bit, right? So like in order to get like your letter, you had to do one sewing, a cooking, a craft, and like a Bible questionnaire or something. There was like 4 things that you had to do. And so like for club meetings, we would meet, and then like for, they would do like a cooking that we would do, and that would count. Or we would do like a craft and like make bracelets, or like things like, or sewing, like we would do things like that. And so it's cool now that I look back on it. I'm like, okay, like I guess like I learned a little bit more about sewing, and like how to do things like that. But my favorite was definitely playing, because I just remember like on club meeting days, you would have a shorter practice. I don't know if that's how it was for you guys too,
Yeah.
but one day a week is like your long, like it's just practice. And then the other day a week, it's shorter, because then you have club meeting. And I remember I didn't like those days because I wanted to just keep playing. Like, don't get me wrong, love Jesus, all that stuff. But like, I just wanted to keep playing. I didn't want to like sit in a room and like do a sewing.
I totally get it. I totally know what you mean. It's like, can we go outside again? Yeah. Definitely. Well, who are some of your leaders? Who are some of your coaches that you remember maybe had an impact on you?
Yeah. So I had, and Mrs. Drain still does Royal Friends. So I had her when I was a Royal Friend. I actually had Valerie Johnson for 1 year, when I was, they've renamed everything so many times, but I think I was in like 3rd grade, and I had her for a year. But I'd say like the most significant coach I had was Stacy Prest. So shout out to Stacy.
All right.
Because I would have had her I had her as like a 5th and 6th grader. And then when I started, when you get old enough and you start coaching in the program, I coached alongside her. So I had her like in that coaching realm for probably the longest. And she definitely had the most impact on me. Because I was not an easy child. And she definitely used to like call me out on stuff, as a kid and even as a coach. And so like, I really respect that. In the moment, like I was probably bitter and I was like a brat about it, but looking back now, I'm like, dang, she really like whipped me into shape.
Yeah, we don't appreciate it necessarily at the time, but looking back, and then especially since you've gotten into coaching now, you're kind of like, oh, that's what she was doing. Now you're reaping what you sow. Now you're having to deal with young ladies the past few years,
Yeah.
Glendora at Glendora
Yeah.
High. So what about Rio? You go into Rio, and Care and Rio are similar, but there was, for me, that at least there was that separation of school and then Care. But then when you go into Rio, it's kind of like the same. It's like the same group of friends now. You're still playing sports and everything gets a little bit more real. At least that was how it was for me. What was your Rio experience like?
It was good. I was in a class that we didn't have a whole lot of girls. So my friends that are outside of Rio, they give me such a hard time because they're like, how big was your graduating class? And I'm like, 24, like what? Like, they give us a hard time. But in that class of 24, there was only like 7 girls. And 2 of which were not foreign exchange students. So we were a really unique class. And I think because we were smaller on like our girl to guy ratio was so off, like we were kind of a family, I feel like.
Mm.
Of course, there's like that divide of like certain groups or cliques or whatever, but at the end of the day, like we were still pretty cool. Like there was no like animosity between like, oh, well, that group, like they're a bad influence, or like, oh, that group, like they're too goody goody, like nothing like that. Like we were always like cool with each other. And even now, like when we see each other, like it's always a good time. So I don't know. My Rio experience, like I think about how unique it is of, you know, I got to travel so much and I got to play all these sports. People ask me, "Well, what sports did you play growing up?" And I'm like, "Well, let me tell you, you
Yeah.
start rattling off everything." And people like look at you like, "Oh my gosh, like you did all those sports?" And I'm like, "I did, but my school's really small." It's
Exactly.
um it was cool. And then even talking about like places I've been, going to Europe, for example, I'm sure you did a Europe trip too. Um, like it's unheard of to go to Europe for a month and pay only like 4 grand,
Yeah.
right? Like that's absolutely unheard of. And so Rio has like all those super unique experiences. And I think because of that, like I've almost been to like all 50 states, mostly because of Rio, and going on summer trips. And they make the most of the time that you have there, I think. Um, so Brandon and I talk about Rio, and we jokingly say, he's gonna hate me for saying this, but we jokingly are like, oh, we're only together for the D1 babies. But um, but we talk about Rio and how unique it is, with traveling and the opportunity for sports. Um, so I think for anyone who like doesn't know what Rio is and they just like they hear all the guests that you have and they're like another Rio Hondo alumnus, like yeah, like we're pretty cool. We're pretty unique.
It's a proud membership for sure. And to see where all the alumni have gone in their careers, and a lot of service to others is phenomenal. And I tell people this all the time, whether it's the boys program, the girls program, if you go to Rio Hondo Prep, you will not get a better experience in your high school years anywhere else. And I would put the Rio experience up against any other school. You're going to learn to play sports, be on a team. You're going to learn some type of musical or drama. You're going to act and you're going to do all these things, plus a pretty good education with teachers that care, and the friendships you make because the class sizes are so small. I mean, lifelong friendships. I mean, I people can tease it or make fun of it or whatever, but I would put the Rio experience, the Rio years up against anything really.
Yeah. We may not be like the Mater Days or the, St. Paul's as far as like competition or like, we're not a Division 1 school, but we do produce some athletes, and yeah, the experience is just it's so unique. Like you really can't get what we get at being at a small school like Rio, like you can't do that at bigger schools. I tell my high school girls at Glendora, like, yeah, I went to a really small school, but how many of you guys, do performances? You are a like tri-sport athlete, like it's like less common at another school to play multiple sports.
Mm.
You get a couple dual sport athletes here and there, but a lot of them they kind of start specializing in a sport and they go from there.
I would say it's like, to sum it up, you could say small school, big experiences. I mean, that you mentioned it, going to Europe, playing the multiple sports. I mean, I'm sure there's it's Christmas time right now. We all remember a Christmas program or two. Maybe we didn't want to do it, or we did want to do it, but you just all of you put it all into one box, and it's just like, wow, this is a pretty special present. You guys, we talked about your classmates and your group of friends. That was a really special time at Rio on like the football side of things. I mentioned Zach Stiver and Javier, who we'll talk more about on their podcast. But that group of guys really had a really good run in football for a few years. Do you remember those, and a basketball championship too, I think.
Yep, they don't let me forget that. Because my age group, I'm sandwiched in between Javi and Zach, in as far as like grades go. And that age group between like what would be like 2012 or even like 2011 a little bit, through 2013, they had the back-to-back football championship and the basketball championship. So they give me a really hard time because they're like, I have 3 rings, Erin. How many rings do you have? And I'm
Oh
like,
boy.
I was in a higher division than
Yeah.
you. So, like I play that game back with them. So no, they do not let me forget that they have 3 championship rings, and that the girls, we sadly did not get any those years. But it's cool. There was definitely like what I missed like playing at Citrus. I just remember like being on the sidelines and like looking up in the stands, and I'm like, wow, I miss like the pep band and our student section. Like we showed up for each other, I think. Nothing like being in the pavilion and that whole like side of like underneath the basketball hoop, that whole like side where like the green stairs were.
Yeah.
RIP to the pavilion, but that whole section, I just remember it being like filled, and like as a child, like being excited to be in that student section one day. So I that's what I probably miss the most, is just like having people rooting you on.
Yeah, it really was special down the pavilion. Yeah, the pit area. That was, oh man, just good times over there, leading the cheers and screaming and yelling. And you know what? High school boys are pretty funny. They're high school boys, but you show up at a girls volleyball game or a girls basketball game. That's a good time for high school boys, because they just lose their mind and go crazy, and support the young ladies out there.
Yeah, definitely. It's so funny. We would give them a hard time. I'm like, you don't even know what you're cheering for. And they're like, I don't care. I'm yelling. And I'm like,
you spiked it. Yeah, cool. Learning the rules as you go. How did you guys do in sports throughout? I mean, the boys were winning championships left and right. You guys were playing in a tough prep league in volleyball, which I know is always tough. Basketball. So, I mean, how'd you guys do throughout your career?
we were more dominant. I think we were I don't know if we were like better seated or like in a division that was better suited for us, I guess I should say, for basketball and softball. But I was on a couple of softball teams where we won like prep league champs. That was kind of something that even my oldest sister, Macy, her team won, like they were back-to-back champs. And then when I came in, there's like, I think I was on a team with like a couple of prep league champs for softball. So I think we might have just been in a better situation for like basketball and softball. Because volleyball's tough. We, playing against schools like Chadwick, Mayfield, who else? Poly. But Chadwick and Mayfield, they were really like some of our tougher games, because all of those girls, they just had the money to be in club. So, our team, we have 0 club players for volleyball, whereas we're playing against teams with girls who have been getting touches all year long because they're on club teams. Or Chadwick, they play beach club. So, which is a very different dynamic, but it makes you a better player too. So I think for volleyball, we were just not in as, I don't, we were just in a harder situation to try to fight to get the titles that, the guys got for football. But I think we were just in a better position for basketball and softball. So my time as a player there it was good. Um, Volleyball, like, we would still show up and we would take games from some of these people, but we would lose in 4 or lose in 5. But we would win games too. Like, we would play Westridge and Webb, and even Poly, we would beat Poly too. It was really like Chadwick and Mayfield that were kind of our harder ones.
I remember it was our senior year, and the girls were very supportive. It was a big push for football games, and I remember as we got into our senior year, it was like, hey, we need to go support the girls too. And Alicia Lammers, who was the best volleyball player at the time, an incredible junior class below us, they were in a similar predicament where they were always kind of not placed in a division they should have been in. They eventually got to the right division and went all the way and won the school's first CIF title that year. But it was earlier in the year where I think Alicia, we went to a road game. We went to, I think it was either Mayfield or Westridge, and she bribed us with cookies. She made cookies for all the guys who came to the game, and we ended up getting kicked out of the gym by the refs because we were too obnoxious or something. And as we're leaving the gym, we're chanting like First Amendment. Like, it was hilarious. A good memory. One of the first volleyball games I attended, like, that I actually cared about was back then. And the girls went on to win a CIF title. So I'd like to think we had something to do with it, with our intensity in the stands.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, the sugar rush probably helped as well.
Yeah, there you go. So no, they were great. And then the girls came back the next year and won it again. So 2 volleyball banners up there. Was there a third? Has there been another volleyball title since then, or no? Maybe it was basketball. I know the girls won
Yeah. There was basketball. I came close a couple times for basketball. The guys also don't let me live that one down either.
Did you guys get to the final?
Yeah, we went to CIF twice when I was on varsity my sophomore year and my senior year. Wow. We went to the CIF championship game, and unfortunately lost. So the guys give me a hard time too, and they're like, "Yeah, well, you could have, but you lost." And I'm like, "Go home, go away."
Yeah, go away. Come on, it's hard enough to lose. Where were those 2 games played? Do you remember?
I do. Yeah. So one of my sophomore year was played at the Anaheim Convention Center, which is like the turtle looking building next to Disneyland. That was a super cool experience. That was my sophomore year. It's a huge convention center, right? So they bring in the stands, they put the court out, and it's not a typical gym. So that was a really interesting experience. Like, I felt important being at that game. They put you in a locker room, and it was just, that one was a really cool experience. I don't remember who we played. That's really bad. But I just remember being there. That was cool. And then my senior year, we actually played at Mater Dei High School. That was really cool too. Yeah, I just remember being there, and Mater Dei has such a reputation of being just an athletic school. And so I just remember being in that gym and just being cool, I get to compete here. So yeah.
And then the third, that's where the boys won the basketball championship too, was at Mater Dei in the Anaheim Convention Center. It's old, but yeah, it's a big arena. And I think the girls one year played at the Long Beach Pyramid. They lost. The girls have lost a few basketball championships. It's so close. And then I think they did win one a few years later.
Yeah. But then they were in a higher division. And so me and my former teammates were all bitter. We're dang, they didn't have it as hard as we play the old lady card, and they're in our day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Back in my day, absolutely. Exactly. Trust me, it gets even worse as you get into your 30s, and I'm sure beyond. You're just oh man, kids these days, You're like, what are you you sound like an old man or an old woman.
Oh.
Brutal. So anyway, great experience at Rio, played in some championship games, fell just short. You knew though right away that you wanted to continue playing and pursue a college career in volleyball. How did that all go down?
So I actually didn't so I graduated, right? And like during my senior year, um, I didn't know a whole lot about like the recruiting process or um, playing what it looked like to play at the next level. I actually didn't want to go to Citrus at first because I just heard the horror stories of, getting stuck and not being able to get classes. And I was already like, oh gosh, like I'm not the best student. Like I'm going to be there forever. Um, but then I ended up going to Citrus and it was fine. I actually tried out for softball first. So the summer of my senior year summer, going into my freshman year of college, I tried out for the softball team and I was the only walk on out of like 17 or 18 recruits. And so unfortunately I didn't make it at that time. But then I ended up just like, well, I'm gonna take my freshman year really chill. I'm just gonna take a couple classes. Like I was so afraid of just like flunking out or something. Like I just took a couple classes, like just get my feet wet. I ended up actually going on a 2 week mission trip with my church. And then like I was able to like do cool stuff like my freshman year. But then during the spring of my freshman year at Citrus, I was like, I want to try out for volleyball. Like, let's just see what happens. So I emailed the coach, with like a traditional, like, I played all these sports in high school, da 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 da. Like, I would love to come play for you. And he was like, come to practice. This is where we meet, this day, this time, whatever. And I was like, cool. So I went and then I ended up making the team, played for 2 years. Um, Best experience of my life. And, came out with some of my best friends that I still have now. Um, and then of course I met Brandon at that time. And then during what is like my true sophomore year, what would have been technically my third year at Citrus, um, the softball coach approaches me and she was like, hey, you used to play softball, right? And I was like, yeah, I don't know if she remembered me trying out or not. And I didn't want to remind her. So I was like, yeah, like I played in high school. And she's like, great, come play for me. I need some girls. And I was like, okay. So then I ended up playing a year of softball too. So it was like,
Wow. Multi-sport college athlete over here.
it's all, it's all from Rio.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Another sport. Cool. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So you talked about meeting Brandon Hayashi, now the head football coach at Citrus, but at the time he was a football player. And he said on the podcast with me, you uttered two words that sparked the love fire that became in a training room of all places. So what do you remember of this wonderful story he told me?
He Anytime somebody, like if we're together and people ask how we meet, he always goes, yeah, Erin, how did we meet? And I'm like, you love when I tell the story. But it's funny hearing both sides of it, because he remembers it slightly different than me, of course. But I always have to like preface the story with like, when you're an athlete, and especially at the junior college level, like, people from other sports, whether you meet them in the classroom, like somebody might be wearing like a Citrus soccer shirt, and like if you're in their class, you kind of like, you go sit with them and you're like, oh, you play sports here? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, me too. So then like you like become friends in class. So like you start to get to know people on other sports and stuff like that. So people hang out in the training room a lot. And I just remember like walking down the hallway and I had thought he was like so cute or whatever. And I was like, I just wanted to be his friend. But he was kind of standing over, like in between the training room and the hallway. So I could like see he was standing in the doorway. And I was with my friend Jackie at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, there he is. So he like walk over and I just looked him dead in the eyes and I went, sup dog? And then he like, he looks at me and he's like, "What's good?" And I immediately, like, as I said that, I was like, my eyes got wide. And he like turned to say bye to whoever it was in the training room. He like turns to say bye, and I was gone. Like I left, I went out the door, and my friend is like, "Oh, okay, we're running now." And so I just like booked it. And then when he talks about this, he's like, "Yeah, I looked for you. I don't know where you went." And I was like, "I might have hid in a bush. Like, I
Yeah.
really don't know where I went. I ran." And then we started hanging out from there, and here we are 6 years later.
Wow. It's so funny. Man, the male female dynamic is always interesting. I was never good at those first few words. So to come up with what, what you said is understandable. Sometimes the pressure of the moment, or whatever, you just blurt
Yeah.
out something. Oh my goodness. I just said that. My girlfriend, Valerie, she teases me all the time because our friends were setting us up and whatever. And I was just so shy. And they would tell me, how do you mess up hey? All you gotta say is hey. I'm like, no, anyway, sup dog. That's probably the best first opener I've ever heard.
Yeah, I'm a real winner, apparently.
Well, I don't know how many times Brandon's been approached by young ladies before, but that was definitely unique and memorable. And here you guys are. So you start talking and you eventually go out on a date. Who asked who out here?
Um, Gosh, I don't know. We're so bad. We don't even like remember like our true like first date. Because when we first started talking, it was in like group settings.
Hmm.
So we would, some of my teammates, some of his teammates, we'd go out because our practices would end around the same time. So we would go and get like acai bowls or like protein shakes after practice or whatever. So we would always meet up at this one place. Um, and then it would be, people would start leaving, and him and I would like stay, and we would talk. And so I don't know who like truly, maybe he did, I don't know. Or I try to be like, so like, are we gonna go out sometime? Or, I think I was probably just so naive. I don't know. Maybe I block a lot of this out. But I feel like it was fairly mutual because we would
Yeah.
hang out in groups and then it would just kind of go from there.
So,
So
so
ironically,
being athletes in college, like I've heard this before with other like couples who got together as athletes and stuff like, so you guys go to each other's games a lot. You remember going to watch him play football?
yeah, yeah. And I actually, like, when I first saw him was at one of my games because he was good friends with one of my teammates. And so I would ask her like, "Oh, who is that guy? Like, what's his deal?" And I think he would do, I don't know if it was before or after we got together. Um, but I remember him doing the balls for our game. So like we have like a 3-ball system. It makes the game go so much faster. But you basically get like a new ball every serve. So like they would wipe it off and they give you the ball. So he would work our game a little bit for that. Um, I remember going to his games for like what I could go to because they were on like Saturday afternoons. So if I didn't have work or something, like I would try to go, sit up in the stands. Now when I go to his games, though, I'm like, I'm not sitting in the stands. I'm going to stand on the field.
I'm with the head man. I'm with the head guy here.
Yeah. Well, going to Citrus, like I know still a lot of like my volleyball coach is actually the equipment manager. So I help him get the game set up, get any tools that he needs. We do the headsets. And I know the 2 assistant ADs. One was my softball coach. And the other, he was there. Like I ended up working some basketball games with him. So I know a lot of like the faculty. Um, so I have an in on the field. I promise you, I'm not just like standing next to Brandon and like yelling at us. I keep my distance from
Yeah.
him during the game. I'm not a hovering girlfriend, I promise.
What do you think of him on the field in his element? There's a different attitude, mindset, whatever. When guys put that headset on, they can become a different person. I mean, have you ever seen him and be like, oh man, like he's either yelling at a kid or another coach, or I mean, he doesn't seem that fiery to me. But again, I haven't refed any of his games. I did actually ref a few games when he was playing. We found that out just through the natural timeline, which is kind of funny. But yeah, what do you think of him as a coach? What do you see? Is there anything unique that you're like, oh man, I didn't think I'd see that side of him?
Yeah, that's funny. You mentioned reffing. I remember you reffing one of my games one time during softball. I don't know if you remember that.
Softball?
Softball.
I remember because it was one time. It was one time.
No, I think it was one I was catching, and I was like, "Oh, hey, you're Matt Hersema," and you're like, "What's up?"
Wow. See, there's a connection here. I didn't realize that. I did one softball game. I think Christian Yamas was the base umpire. She was out there, and I was just like, what am I doing? I was like, oh, it's the same thing. I can do this. And yeah, that was the last game, first and last.
But no, watching him on the field it's great. I see like the coach Brandon a lot. Because he gets like he'll get phone calls from his kids and stuff like that. So I see Coach Brandon a lot. But when he's on the field, sometimes I just laugh. I just because I'm standing with like my coach, or like I'm standing with some, the AD or something, and we're chit-chatting, we're talking, and then like, Brandon goes off and he can get fiery. He's pretty mellow. But he'll go off sometimes, and I just laugh. I just think it's funny because I'm like, oh, there he goes. Or I see him get after some of his kids, like this year, especially with him being like the head coach, because he was head coach. I think he technically wasn't the interim yet. He was just the associate head coach like a year before COVID, or during like the COVID year. So he hadn't been like coaching for a while, obviously, but like this year was the year like he could really get after some of his kids. And I just remember there'd be a couple times, they're yelling for some kid and they're like, Johnny, like, get over here. And I just remember him like being in someone's face and being like, what are you doing? Like, I could just imagine him saying like, your whole position is over here and you're over here. What do you do? I could see him having that interaction. And then he like has his play card and he's like yelling at him, and then he just like bops him on the head and he's like, get over there. And I just started laughing because it's funny.
It's comical. I mean, I've been on a lot of sidelines, a lot of football games, and especially at the college level, and some of the things you hear, oh man, I cannot repeat as a as a citizen of the community here. I can't repeat some of the things that I've heard on a football field. They're funny, sometimes vulgar. It's good stuff, but it's got to be fun for you, is being a coach yourself and seeing him and to be so young and to be a college coach. I mean, you got to be just absolutely proud of him.
Oh, absolutely. And this is totally where he's meant to be, right? Being a coach. And he loves the junior college realm of it all. Because both of us, like we didn't know how much the junior college system like had to offer, or what that looked like being a student athlete there, and being successful and moving on to play at a higher division. So even now, like with my high school girls, I tell them all the time, like, Citrus is a great opportunity for you. You should consider playing. And him being a coach at Citrus and recruiting, he gets the opportunity to talk to a lot of his kids and just really go through that process of, look, you play at a junior college and you get better, faster, stronger. And in most cases, some universities will look at a junior college athlete first because they have that college experience. They're a little bit more ahead in their education. They kind of have that discipline and they're not still like fresh out of high school. So he loves being a coach at a junior college. Like he wants to ideally stay there for as long as he can. Obviously, if like a really big Division I school or something like comes and says, hey, come coach for us, like, he would obviously take that into consideration. But right now, like, he absolutely loves the junior college football. He's all about it right now. So it's fun watching him coach and seeing like the impact that he has on these kids. I'm still getting used to the phone call. So he gets calls a lot from his kids, but he'll get a phone call from one of his kids at like 10 o'clock at night or something. And I'm like, Brandon, we need boundaries with some of these kids. And he has to remind me that like for some of these guys, Brandon might be the only option.
Yeah.
And like he has had an impact on some of these kids who are struggling with mental illness or like suicide or just like going through a really tough time of either like they lost a parent or a sibling or the list goes on and on. But for some of these kids, like Brandon is the only person that they feel they can truly go to like talk through some of this stuff. And so that's also really cool to see him be that type of influence on these student athletes is incredible.
It's a tremendous responsibility. And, for a lot of these guys at junior college, it's the last chance. It's their they missed out on other opportunities for whatever reason. And this is their last chance to kind of make something of themselves or whatever. And yeah, there's different obstacles. And this is one of my biggest issues when things started to get shut down and sports were not being played. It's like people don't understand that young people, adults, men, women, like some of them really need this. They need athletics. They need those opportunities to excel and to just kind of build it and become a better person. And so when you kind of took that away from people, it wasn't, better safe than sorry, all this stuff. But it's like, no, you're doing more damage to me by not having kids play sports or adults play sports in college and things, because otherwise there's other options that could lead down a bad road.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm fortunate enough that not that COVID is a good thing, but I'm happy that I don't know what we would have done if I was still like in school or if I was a young kid. Like I asked my parents this, like, well, what would you guys have done, if this happened when us three girls were all in elementary school, and my mom's a nurse and my dad's a teacher. Like, so if COVID happened, like if we were young, I don't know what that would have looked like in this house, like with all of us. And I know I for sure would have gone stir crazy not being able to play sports. Like, that was my reason for like going to school, was because I knew I would be able to go play volleyball, go play basketball, something. But like, that really kept me going. The like activeness of being a student athlete is what like kept me going to school. So I know for a lot of these guys too that, yes, some of them are only in it to try to play at the next level, but at the end of the day, like they're also getting an education too. And, if you want these guys to continue or, to stay out of trouble or anything, or well, all student athletes, like they needed that like community of their team or like the community that like athletics offers and stuff like that. So yeah, that was really hard for me too, to like not be with my girls during COVID and just seeing the impact that it had on like kids of not being able to play. Like, I don't know what I would have done if I was in high school. I would have been so bummed.
I say, I don't know how I got through high school, how I would have without sports. I mean, college was hard enough. I was like, man, you got to go to school and not get to play sports. So you guys got to play sports. I didn't, but I was like, oh, this is hard. And that's why it took me 5 years. But anyway, yeah, kids need that. They need that outlet. And it's good to hear guys like Brandon are, taking care of his guys. Because ultimately it's not about the plays you call on the field. It's about those relationships and molding, young men to become something. And I got to ask, he went to Montana State for a couple of years. So was that a little difficult for you guys when he was kind of a few states away, pursuing his college football career?
Yeah. We would have just started dating. We were only like a year into our relationship when he left.
Hmm.
So that was hard at first. But like it gave me, I love traveling. So it gave me an excuse to like go visit him. Um, and it wasn't as hard as like it probably could have been. With him being in Montana, it's not it's only an hour time difference. You know, and it's a short flight away, but you know, he easily could have been like on the East Coast
Mhm.
or, you know, and the time difference just being like really hard. But he came home enough and I visited and he was only there for 2 years, so that made it easy as well. Um, but it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't like easy, but it wasn't hard. You know, long distance, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of Jesus and
S-
um
Sounds like
lo-
it was good for you guys. Sounds like it was good for you guys as a couple almost.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was really good for him too, because he, you know, he hasn't traveled a ton. I like to take credit for his traveling. Because I just, you know, I'm like, oh, you know, we got to go to this place because I've been there before. And he's like, you've been to the Grand Canyon or like you've been to Mount Rushmore, you know, and I'm like, yeah, like let's go. So it was really cool for him to like kind of be away from home and on his own and really learn like what that looked like. Um, but yeah, it was, I just remember us doing like we would use like the Bible app and we would do like devotionals like with each other. Um, and it was a lot of just learning how to navigate um a relationship when you're not with them. Um, so it really built a lot of trust between us, and I think because of the long distance, like it makes it easier for us now. You know, like it was an adjustment when he came home because I was so used to just like doing my own thing, going out or whatever, and just like calling or texting him. But like it took a while when he came home for me to be like, "Oh, yeah, you're here. Do you wanna come with me?" Like, it was a lot of remembering, like, "Oh, wait, my boyfriend's here. I should probably, like, go out with him."
Oh, you're here. Oh, okay. Don't you have somewhere to be? No,
Yeah.
I get that. I traveled for umpiring a little while and it was, 4 months at a time or whatever. So it's difficult, but I think it's all a mindset thing. Like you talked about, it takes work, and it sounds like you guys, did a really good job of just, uh, being realistic about it all. And, I've been watching, Yellowstone. I'm addicted to that show. So Montana, I'm like, I'm ready to move up there, especially after talking to Brandon a few months back. I was like, oh man, let's get that. What do you call it? Bose Angeles, I think he said, Bozeman, Montana.
Yep, that's what that's, like, nicknamed.
I like it up there. I'm kind of I'm not really an outdoorsman, but I like kind of that, country cowboy, at least, small town feel. Did you like your experiences up there?
I did. Yeah, it's you know, Matt, I think you would be okay. It's small town enough, but it's still, like, elements of big city, so you
Yeah.
I think you'd be okay. But, I, like, envision I don't know, I go between, like, loving a small town because my sister lives in Minnesota, and she lives in a small town of gosh, I don't even know how many like, what the population is, because that's not necessarily something we talk about here of, "Oh, I live in a town of, you know, 50,000 people." Like, we just don't talk about that here in California. But, um, I liked Bozeman a lot. You know, Brandon talks about sometimes moving there. Or he's like, "Yeah, I could see myself going to Montana," and I'm like, "All right, we're gonna stay in California, like, relax." Um, but no, Bozeman is really unique because they have, like, the hot springs there, you know, the north part of Yellowstone is in Montana, so it's, like, about a 40-minute drive from Bozeman, um, you know, and then you're in Yellowstone, which is cool. Um, and we did some fun stuff. He did a lot of really cool things that he wouldn't have done here in California. Like he branded cows. I don't know if he told you that story, but they branded some of his like teammates' cows, and he got to like work on a ranch for like during Christmas break or something. Um, but I don't know if I would like the snow. That wasn't my favorite.
Yeah, that's the one thing.
Yeah, it's great to like look at,
Hmm.
but driving in it is not my favorite. It just it was interesting. And every time I went to visit him, there was always snow. Like it didn't matter when I went. I went in February, I went in April, and then I went in November, like three very different times of the year. And there was always snow. I just
Yeah, that is, I don't know if I could ever get used to that. I wouldn't mind getting out of this state though, but yeah, I gotta figure out the whole snow thing if I can control the weather or something.
yeah. Well, one of his games that I went to actually, it was like snowing and it was 10 degrees.
Oh,
And it was I was standing in the stands because you can't even sit because the seats are all covered. And so I just remember standing there with like hot chocolate and I had like 5 layers on and I'm like, "Go Brandon."
what? Let's go, Brandon. Is that what you said? Oh man, another story. Sorry. I don't need to go there. Let's go, Brandon. I've heard that a lot here this past year. Anyway,
Oh, I bet.
those are my 2
Poor
cents.
guy, he was so confused about that. Like people keep asking us and they ask him like, "Oh, like, so do people come up to you and say, 'Let's go Brandon'?" And he was like, "What?" Like both of us were like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I don't know. So it was kind of funny.
Oh man, I didn't plan that at all. I promise. That's hilarious. Let's go, Brandon. That might be the title of this episode, just so you know. Uh, anyway, what about you, Erin? You got involved in coaching. You've been there a few years at Glendora High. Go Tartans. How did you get involved in coaching after playing at Citrus?
So one of my teammates is a Glendora alumni, and her head coach that she had when she was in high school was still coaching at the time. She was like kind of on her way out, but she reached out to my friend Jackie and um, asked her if she was interested in coaching, and she was like, "Yeah, I'll coach." And her head coach was like, "Yeah, if you want, you could bring a friend to come coach with you." And so Jackie hit me up and was like, "Hey, do you want to coach?" And I was like, "Yes, I 1000% yes, I want to coach." Because that was like the biggest thing I missed, not being at Rio anymore. That was one of the things where I was like, do I want to do archery or not? But my biggest thing was I wanted to coach. And so I was like, well, like I can always get involved in other ways. And so, a few years went by and then she reached out to me about coaching. And so here we are. I'm still coaching there now. Um, Glendora is like it's a small town, weirdly enough. Everybody knows everybody. We have to remind our girls well, our whole coaching staff is actually a GHS alum, except for me. And so like, they know they can talk to the girls and say, "Oh yeah, I had this teacher," or whatever. But we have to remind them that it's a small town. If they're getting into trouble or anything like that, like we know about it. So, and I think the girls like don't realize that. But some of them we're still like we're removed enough. But some of them might have like a older brother or sister that might be like 6 or 7 years older than them, so they might have been in the same classes as some of our coaches, but it's a lot of fun being at the high school level.
Yeah, Glendora is a small town feel. I born and raised there. Didn't go to the high school or anything, but hey, you hear a lot of the same last names, or you hear so and so knows so and so. So yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And what was the last year like for you? Well, this most recent season, of course, compared to, because you guys didn't play at all last year in 2020, right?
No, we were the only sport on campus actually that didn't get a season at all last
Oh,
year, which was weird. I think football was able to get like a couple games. And even then they got like maybe 5, like maybe. But we didn't get to be on the court whatsoever. It was kind of a bummer. We were actually conditioning out on they have like a blacktop area where like some basketball hoops are, almost like where the buses are parked like at Care. You know how there's like there's like blacktop and it's basketball courts. They kind of have an area like that, and we were out there, spread out, and we had to have them in like pods, and we were just conditioning on the blacktop, and it was super lame. All of us coaches actually bought megaphones on Amazon, um, so that we could like yell to them, because we had to keep them spread out. But we had a good consistent group of girls that would come, um, and so I think because of that, then going into a season where we could actually play, um, the effort was different. The type of like buy-in that we had from the girls in previous years, right? Like you have some girls who are they're 100% in, or you have girls that are like they're there but they don't quite have like a work ethic yet, or things like that. But like these girls, they were bought in because I think they saw what not having sports looked like, and so being able to play sports, they were really on top of like wearing masks and washing their hands and just being social distant. Like they were on it because they didn't want to lose volleyball, and so whereas other sports, they were, at least at the high school, I think some of them were like maybe affected by like not being able to play a game because so many girls were out because of COVID or whatever it may be. I want to say like we were one of the only teams. We had some, I don't think we had any girls that like had COVID, but they were like technically like exposed, but by somebody else. So not in our program. So it was like things like that. So our girls were really on it and they were good. Um, about being pretty disciplined and showing up, and the camaraderie, at least with my team, was different than it has been in past years. And I think just because this year it just really like everyone was like, let's go, let's play, we're on a team. Like, I don't know, it was just a little different. So it was really cool.
Adjusting for sure. So you started uh, with the JV program, and then eventually are now varsity, or kind of which teams were you coaching?
So I'm still JV. Jackie and I coached together for JV for 1 year, and then now she's the head freshman coach. I'm head JV, and then we actually have another coach, Erin. And the running joke is if you say Erin between there, we have 4 coaches. Courtney kind of floats between all the levels, but we have this like running joke that like if you say Erin, you'll get half of it. Like we'll all turn because we think you're talking to us. But she coaches varsity, and but I float between all the levels. We all sit on each other's benches. um we are actually really good friends, the 4 of us. Not just, I think coaching made us closer, but we still hang out, we talk all the time. So like we enjoy sitting on each other's benches. Like we're not a coaching staff where like, okay, my game's done, like good luck, see you later, we stay and we help each other. And so the girls, that's also something we kind of scare the girls with. Like, the freshmen, I tell them like, I'm watching you now as a freshman, if you want to make my team,
Yeah.
so we kind of like scare them. Or like, the varsity coach is sitting on the freshman bench too, and we say the same thing, like, you want to play varsity, like this is the varsity coach, she's sitting right here on your bench, like, you got to show up or whatever. So it's cool. It's cool.
Oh, it's got to be fun. I mean, to do it as long as you've been doing it, you got to love it. And I think the relationships you do kind of make as a fellow coach with your coaching staff those are special too. Todd Carson and I become best of friends just from our experiences coaching together. And yeah, it's definitely special. What about you and Brandon? Do you guys ever coach talk? I guess he's coaching 19, 20-year-old man. You're coaching, teenage girls, but still, I mean, it's different sports, but do you guys ever bounce things off each other?
Yeah, I'll ask him sometimes like for like what we should do for conditioning, or things like that. Or he will ask me like if he's sending out like an email or like a text or something, like he'll ask me like how he should phrase it. And I tell him like, okay, like you got to say it like that. That's where like the communications and like the program director and me like comes out, and I'm like, okay, so you have to do this and that, like. But for the most part, we it's more of like a support. We're not necessarily like, oh, I have this kid, like what should I do? um it's just more like we show up for each other for games and stuff. I go to more of his games because it's just easier it's on a weekend and it's easier for me to get to his game than for him to come midweek to mine. Um, but it's kind of difficult to really share like between like what we do, because sometimes like I'll try to give him my opinion on some, if say he has a kid who he's like, I don't know how to get them more involved, or like I try to tell him like how he should say it or what he should do, and he's like, Erin, that's not going to work. And I'm like, okay, like, well, like, what about this? Or so like it's just so different. There's not like a whole lot of overlap, but there is. It's, I don't know, it's so unique. um being in the two sports that we're in and the ages, because he can age sometimes between, like, his guys are between like 18, 19, right? And sometimes he has like 28-year-olds on his team, which is like so unique, to be like coaching someone who's older than you. Whereas, I very specifically have like 15 and 16-year-olds, Um, so it's a little bit different. But I think especially this year, like we both had to see like what it looked like, um as far as like talking to our kids. There was a few times where I was like, Brandon, like you might just have to call them out and say like, you're not doing this. And he's like, well, okay. I try to tell my girls like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it for you. You're getting old enough now that like I don't need to give you a gold star for everything. Like, welcome to the real world. Like, it's tough. Like, so I try to tell my girls that like I will be your biggest fan, but I will also call you out on things.
Mm.
And Brandon kind of coaches in the same way too, where he's like, I'll support you, but also if you're not doing something, he's like, I'm trying to turn you into a man. Like, so if you're not doing something, I'm going to call you out on it. So he is really good about that. So I don't know. When it comes to coaching, we kind of stay in our lanes, but we will give each other advice, and it's more like support of like, well, have you tried this with that person yet? Or so.
It's refreshing. It's refreshing to hear, no gold stars or participation awards. It's like, hey, this is the real life, as you mentioned. So that
Yeah.
is great stuff indeed. What about after a loss? A Saturday, most of the Citrus games, I think, are daytime, but a Saturday night, how's Brandon after a tough loss? Does that kind of ruin, I don't know, date night or the weekend for you? Or I'm always curious of specifically football coaches, wives, girlfriends, because I don't know, it's that one game a week. There's all this build up to it, and it's either win or loss. And then it's like, oh, you're just either on cloud nine or just really down in the dumps.
Yeah. He had a couple of tough losses um this season. Like Antelope Valley was one. I guess you would have talked to him before season, right?
Yeah,
So
August 20th.
yeah, Antelope Valley was tough, and Santa Ana was tough. But the away games, I drive to them, and so then he'll come back with me in the car, and I just kind of let him just decompress.
Yeah.
Um, or I'll ask him like, so like what happened? Like what was going on? Or I'll try to ask him more of like, okay, so why did we get this penalty? Like what was that kid doing? Or and he, at the end of the day, like he knows, like obviously he can't control the wins and losses. Like, as a coach, we can prepare you all week, but at the end of the day, like we put kids out on the field and it's up to you, right? Like
Yeah.
what you got to decide what you're going to do. And so I think that's kind of where he just he sees the more like stat side of things, or like the strategy side, where he's like, well, like, you know, this quarterback wasn't throwing as well today, or um, you know, normally I have this kid at corner, but I had to move him to, you know, defensive tackle because someone was, yeah, like eligibility. Like there's
Yeah.
just things
Yeah.
where like he just has to move players around a lot. And so sometimes he's like, well, we lost because I didn't have, or like this kid is injured and he's my starting center or whatever. And so there's things like that. So he tries not to dwell too much on, he doesn't get too like sad. He'll get bummed, of course, but he's just more of like, well, he's more realistic.
Mhm.
He's like, we lost because we didn't have this starter, or,
Yeah.
these 5 guys are injured. And he's like, I didn't have them.
Yeah.
And so there's things like that. So he's just more like, okay, now I know what to talk about tomorrow, or what we're going to work on during the week. He's more of like, all right, what are we going to do next? He doesn't dwell too much. So as far as like Saturday nights, like he's okay. Like
Yeah. He's just fine.
he moves on quickly. Him and
That's
I,
good.
like the what is he, the dean of athletics? He talks to me on the sidelines and he's like, oh, well, how's Brandon feeling today? Like, is he stressed? And I'm like, we don't talk about our feelings. Like, fine. And he just looks at me and he's like, oh, great. Both of you are like that. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, he's like, like we don't show too much of like, like, I don't know. We don't.
Oh,
show
those are good traits to have, though, especially, I mean, to be even keel and to move on, and hey, what do we need to do next? I mean, those are very beneficial things, and not just coaching, but life and relationships too. Like, I'm sure, all those experiences add up to good things in other areas of life too. So he sounds like he's doing just fine. And, you guys are doing great. It's by the sounds of things too. A power couple indeed, the volleyball and football coaches in Glendora, California. Let me ask you, Erin, about the Pro and Con podcast. I believe you've had a couple of appearances on there. That's the first time I heard you talking with Zach Stiver and Javier Rodriguez. What do you think of those guys? Their podcasts, and kind of that group of friends that you went to high school with and you're still good buddies with?
Yeah, they're a blast. I love hearing Chris with his like, he just comes out of nowhere with like his one-liners and he's fantastic. I love when he just comes out of left field.
Yeah.
And he has no shame calling out like Zach and Javi, because Chris will say something and then Zach's like, like you're right. So I love that. No, they're a good time. They had myself and Jackie on together because we coached together. So we like kind of talked about that. They've like called me a couple times. And I always know, like, if Zach calls me at like on a random like Tuesday or Wednesday night, I'm like, all right, like he's probably asking me something for the podcast or something, like, okay. And then I came on by myself, but their podcast is fun. When it comes to some of the politics things, politics is just such a, I don't know, like people get so angry. And I'm like,
Yeah.
we need to just not. So I tend to stay away from just politics in general, just because, if somebody starts asking me about, oh, well, what's the president doing? How do you feel about, and I'm just like, I don't know anything, so I can't argue with you. Like, that's more my stance. I try not to get too much involved because I just don't want to have a debate with people, and people just get so fired up for no reason. And I don't know, but
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, some people do walk around like looking for a fight. Hey, I know this, and I'm sure you don't. So let me tell you. It's like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah. I'm like, what we were talking about the beach. How did we get on like, fuel? What? Like there's just things like that. But I think Javi and Zach do exactly what I envision as far as like having like two very different sides. They very much listen to each other, and they talk trash to each other, but like, they, at the end of the day, like they'll say like, well, this is what I think. Okay, I could see why you think that. Well, this is where I'm at. And they will either come to be like, okay, like I can see how you would think that way, or they just come to like a agree to disagree. And I think they do a good job of that, instead of just getting like just mad at each other. So theirs is interesting to listen to sometimes. So when I was on their podcast, I just felt like I like had the headphones on and I have like the mic and I'm like just looking like back and forth at them and I'm like, oh, what's happening?
Yeah, I did theirs. It was a lot of fun, and I was ready for some different issues to pop up or whatever, but I kind of never went there. I just talked about my podcast and just some sports topics, so that was fun. But no, they do a great job. Yeah, you were on there, had some great moments there, and all their guests have been pretty entertaining, and I hope they keep this thing going because it's a great concept. And sometimes after doing this for over a year now, like sometimes it's just getting in front of a mic and going, like no script, no really agenda, just
Yep.
I don't know, let's talk about anything. It's fun. It's
Yeah.
been beneficial, and you meet new people and new conversations and things too. So
Yeah. You sent me a list and I started thinking about it and I was like, okay, maybe I should write down some points. And I was like, you know what? We're just gonna go. If I word vomit my way through this, then that's what happens.
exactly. Well, Erin, what about you? What are some of your hobbies? Maybe what are your I know you're coaching, but what are some of your other goals? Maybe career wise, what are you up to? Yeah, you're in your 20s now, your mid 20s now, whatever it is. And this is a fun time. Everyone told me, hey, your 20s are great. You got options. And it was like, okay, whatever. Now I'm in my late 30s almost. And it's like, wow, where did the time go? So what's in store for your near future?
Gosh, I feel that. If I were to go back to an age, I would do like 23.
Mm,
I feel like that's like you're old enough where people don't like question if you can like go somewhere. Um, but yet like you're still young enough where like you don't wake up with your back hurting in the morning, like that's a good age.
yeah, you can rally.
Yeah, you can rally for sure. No, right now, I mentioned this earlier where like I feel like life is pre-COVID and post-COVID. Like when you're catching up with someone, you're like, well, pre-COVID, I was doing all these things, but post-COVID is, this is what I'm doing. Or post-quarantine, I guess I should say, because we're still like in COVID. But um before I was a program director in the YMCA. Um, and that was really cool being able to like take some of my like care and Rio knowledge and kind of just incorporate that into just a community and family programs and stuff like that. Um, Now, and I was still coaching at the time. Now I work at Starbucks, and it's a good time there as well. I don't see it as a forever job, obviously, but it's a good stepping stone, and it's a good like it's not stressful. Whereas like at the Y, like it can get a little bit stressful. Long days, long hours. But at Starbucks I get to clock out and I'm gone. Nobody's
yeah.
gonna call me, nobody's gonna email me. So it's cool. And I've always kind of wanted to be able to like, have a job like Starbucks or being a barista or something and being able to like tell my kids one day like, oh, I was a barista once, and so it's a good time. I meet a lot of really interesting people, and it's fun being there. I have really good friends. I actually work with Jackie, who I coach with, so her and I work together at Starbucks, and um, we're in between this like we're not in our career, at least not anymore because of COVID, but like we're in this like okay, we're getting ready to kind of step into our career, but like not yet. Like, so it's a unique time for sure. Being in my mid 20s, it's a lot of fun to just be able to just pick up and go. Like this last weekend, I was just down in San Diego for a wedding reception of Dana and Colby Rivera now. So you know, not having any kids or anything, like Brandon and I can just pick up and go somewhere, which is nice. Or, being at Starbucks, like I'm I'm replaceable now where if I request time off, like I don't have to worry about not getting it. Whereas before, like you really have to kind of get your ducks in a row and be like, okay, I'm gonna be gone. This is everything. Like, here you go. Don't call me. But now, like, it's nice to be on vacation and actually be on vacation. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of what I got into during quarantine, I started biking a lot with my parents. One of the coolest things we did was because we live really close to the San Gabriel River Trail. I don't know, it like goes right behind Rio Hondo. Um, and that'll take you all the way down to the beach. So we've done that a handful of times. We've actually taken it all the way. It lets you out in like Seal Beach. And then we've gone down to San Clemente on our bikes, and then came back to Huntington Beach, and then somebody picked us up. But I don't know. I guess hobbies for me is just staying out of trouble.
Yeah.
Um,
You can
and
get in a
staying
little bit. I mean, not a lot, but getting in a little trouble's fun too.
Yeah, you gotta have some good stories,
That's right.
like
Bad decisions make great stories, or so I've been told.
exactly.
I can either confirm or deny that is true. But no, enjoy those 20s. They go quick. Trust me. I'm like, wait a minute. I just graduated high school. What do you mean I'm 36, 37 here in another month? Just crazy. But well, I wish you nothing but the best. It sounds like you and Brandon, the future is bright for you guys, him and coaching football, and you and volleyball, whatever you end up pursuing. I think big things are ahead for both of you guys. And, never say never. You might end up in Montana. You never know.
Oh, I'm down to move anywhere. I'm okay with it. I don't know if it'd have to be a good offer for him.
That's right. There's a football field in every state, I believe. So he'll find something somewhere. But yeah, go Owls, go Tardans. It's cool to talk to somebody who went through Rio and is doing great things. And you know what? I wish you guys Merry Christmas, and thanks for coming on here, Erin. This has been a lot of fun, just chatting about a lot of sports, a lot of coaching, just randomness.
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you for having me. I jokingly told you that, it's not too late to back out of having me as a guest, but no, thanks for having me. Yeah, Merry Christmas to you and Val. Hope you guys have a good holiday season. But yeah, thanks for having us. You should come to one of the games next year, obviously, but come out to a Citrus football game. It'd be a good.
Absolutely, we love it. I saw Brandon at the Charter Oak Rio Hondo game, and I went over, said hello. He said, "Man, it's great to meet you in person." I said, "Oh man, likewise." So if you haven't heard, Brandon's podcast was back on August 20th. For those listening to Erin, if you guys want to hear Brandon, hear his side of the story of you two guys meeting, that's a fun podcast too. So thanks, Erin. We'll be in touch. I'm sure I'll keep looking for those Air Bear likes on those Instagram posts. Have a good one.
All right, bye, Matt.
Well, thank you so much, Erin Murphy, for coming on the Get Home Safe podcast. That was a lot of fun catching up and talking about some moments there that some connections we had, whether it be the Orsburns or she catcher in a softball game, the one and only softball game I ever umpired. I didn't remember that, but until she mentioned it. So great stuff. Her and Brandon doing great work here in the Glendora area, her at Glendora High and Brandon at Citrus College. I love rooting for people like that who are just out there doing the Lord's work, if you will, coaching young men, coaching young ladies to be better people. So it's outstanding stuff. A lot of volleyball and football talk there. Man, two coaches in a relationship. It's gotta be fun. I'm sure bouncing ideas off each other and things. So anyway, thanks again, Erin Murphy. That was a blast, and looking forward to another guest next week on the Get Home Safe podcast. We're trying to branch out and talk to some people we've never talked to. Me and Erin never talked before. Or maybe it is somebody that I know well. It doesn't matter. Either way, it's a fun conversation, and I really enjoy doing these on Friday. It's gonna try to keep it. I say it every time, right? Every time I find a guest and I'm able to put this together, it's like, okay, we did it again. Hopefully somebody new. There's been some repeats too, but it's a blast chatting with people, just having a conversation, right? What a lost art form to be able to do that. So big thanks to Erin Murphy. Guys, we are 8 days away from Christmas. I can't wait. We're counting them down. I hope all the gifts are wrapped, all the decoration should be up, right? But yeah, we finished up all of our gift buying and gift wrapping here a few days ago. So we are looking good in that regard, but Christmas will be here. There's food to buy, drinks to buy. There's all kinds of preparations to be made. So Good luck with all of that to everyone out there. Guys, that'll wrap up our 2 shows this week, our Tuesday episode and our Friday conversation, of course, here on the Get Home Safe podcast. For those new, there's plenty of ways to follow the Get Home Safe podcast. Our Twitter handle is Get Home Safe Pod. Our Facebook and Instagram page is Get Home Safe Podcast. And our email address is gethomesafepodcast@yahoo.com. If you'd like to message me, send me a topic, send me a suggestion, tell me I'm wrong about something. Either way, just say hello. It'd be nice to hear from you guys. Also, there's down in the episode notes, there's a link for to send a voice message if you want to have your voice heard on the podcast, much like a caller calling in. Pretty simple, 1 minute limit. Those are just some options here on the Get Home Safe podcast. Our YouTube channel, for those watching, you already know where that is, but the Get Home Safe podcast, of course. And then there's plenty of other platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google, where you can listen to the Get Home Safe podcast. A lot of options, a lot of content. We're going to try to keep this thing going. I may take a break here in January. I don't know, but I'm also, I also want to vent and rant about some of the NFL action here upcoming with the playoffs and such. But that's another podcast, another day, another time. For now, we're going to keep this thing going. Tuesdays, randomness with just me rambling away about current events and sports. And then on Fridays, like today, you heard a conversation with a great guest. So that's enough for me. Erin Murphy, thank you once again. And to everyone else out there, good luck this Christmas season and have a great weekend. We'll be back next week on Tuesday with just me rambling away as we count down the final days until December 25th, Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, whenever you celebrate. Merry Christmas to all. But guys, until then, as always, no matter what you're doing, whether you're out on the town or around in third base, get home safe.